Great, let's begin. Frank, how are you? How's your day going?
Good, thank you. I'm in San Diego, getting ready to cross the border to Mexicali tomorrow, and I have been practicing my Spanish ahead of the tour. Pero yo aprendo con Duolingo, entonces no es muy bien. Um, but I want to try and speak a little bit of Spanish while I'm in Mexico this time around. I'm very excited for the tour.
Has it been difficult for you to learn Spanish?
Yes. I mean, I've been doing it for a few months now, and I can tell you lots of things about bedrooms and bookcases and meeting people in the park and this kind of thing. You know how it is with those language programs; they don't necessarily teach you the useful stuff at the beginning. But I'm going to be, in a van with a bunch of Mexican people for 10 days, so hopefully my Spanish will get better.
I'm pretty sure it will. So, yes, it's very interesting to me because honestly, one of the most unexpected collaborations I have seen with a Mexican artist is the one you
Yeah.
made with Longshot. And I do want to know, how did you met him? How did you decide to perform specifically that song with him too?
Sure. I think I'm right in saying that I met Gaston when we played in Mexico with NoFX back in 2014. He was
Ooh.
hanging around, and he came up and he was very, very sweet to me about saying he was a fan of my music and my songwriting and stuff, and that meant a lot to me. But also, I wasn't aware of him and his music when we first met, but lots of people were like, "Holy shit, that's Longshot! You should check out his stuff." And I did, and it made me want to learn more Spanish, so that I can understand what he's talking about. But yeah, he's a lovely, lovely guy, and his music is awesome. And we stayed in touch since then. And one of the things that we stayed in touch, the first thing we stayed in touch about was the idea of a tour, because he said to me right the first time we met, he was like, you know, if you ever want to do a proper tour of Mexico, not just, Mexico City and maybe Guadalajara, if you want to do a proper tour of Mexico, then you should talk to me. And I was like, I'm right here, dude. I'm talking to you. So, yeah, and so the tour that starts tomorrow, we've been working on that for a long time, at least kind of in theory. So I'm happy that it happened. But also with my most recent album, I've done a couple of other language versions of songs in the past, but I really wanted
Yeah.
to make a point of doing it with this record. And we started off with the German version of the first song on the album, Do One. My friend Ingo from the Do Nots, who are a big German band, did the translation. We did it as duet, went really well. And then we did an Italian version. Then we did what else have we done? We've done Japanese. Now we've got Spanish.
Oh my God.
Might be more. Yeah, it's crazy, right? Um, it also melts my fucking brain trying to remember all the different versions, you know what I mean? But I mean, it's fun. It's a cool challenge for me. It's a good bit of promotion. You do it as a collaboration with another artist and all of that stuff. But mainly, I think the thing for me is that it's a marker of respect to me. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of saying to people, I get it. I understand why most bands sing in English and why a lot of English singing bands have international appeal and all the rest of it. I do get it, but I also know, obviously, that not everybody in the world speaks English as a first language. And it's just kind of like, it's just a kind of way of sort of saying, yeah, being respectful to an audience. Do you know what I mean? Whether that's in Mexico or indeed Spain or Latin America or indeed Germany or Japan or Italy or whatever, it's just a nice way of saying to people, I know that English speaking people aren't the only people in the world.
Well, let me tell you, that's an amazing way to think about it because not many artists took that much effort in learning a different language or singing on another language to a certain specific audience. I think what you're doing is great because for most of the artists, it's like, okay, we're gonna sing everything in English. We're not even gonna try to get closer to the audience, and I believe
Yeah,
that's very important.
yeah, totally. And I mean, everything we're talking about now is a development on the fact that like whenever we're in another country, I always try and say a couple of sentences on stage in the local language, and usually they're written on a piece of paper and on the stage, and I'm not. Nobody thinks I actually speak Slovakian or whatever the fuck. Do you know what I mean? But it's like, but it's just a nice way of, again, saying to people, like, I get it. I'm the visitor here. When I was a kid, I went to hardcore shows, and like, I remember Swedish bands playing in London and they would speak in English. And I was like, I guess if you go to Sweden, you have to speak in Swedish. And I now know that obviously that's not true. But at the same time, you see a band kind of walk out on stage in Mexico, let's say, and they don't even say gracias or whatever, or like
Mhm.
buenas noches. It's just like, Jesus fucking Christ, dude, it's not that hard. Like, it's just it's just a small thing, man, like when I do the language versions, like I don't learn the language, you know what I mean? Like a lot of the time it's written out phonetically on a sheet of paper. The Japanese one was the fucking hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I
I
don't
can
speak
imagine.
a word of Japanese. But it's kind of cool. Like I say, I genuinely have been making an effort to actually learn Spanish in the last little while. And when I recorded the track with Gaston, I didn't really speak any Spanish. Recorded it, we put it out, and now that I've done like a few months of learning Spanish, I listen back to it. I'm like, oh, I know some of those words.
Cool.
Hay gente que va a odiarte. I get that. I understand that. I know what that means.
Well, what I find very interesting, not only about this language question related to Undefeated, because it is also an album that you have approached on different ways. Specifically, I want to talk about you made an acoustic version of this record,
Mm,
and
yeah.
I do want to know uh, what inspired you, what makes you, what moved you to do that, because nowadays I believe it's difficult for people to get into a full album, and now you give them two of the same, so it's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, the main version of the album is the main version of the album. That's how I want the album to sound. That's how it's meant to go in my head. Do you know what I mean? But I do and have always written songs on my own first before I take them to my band and we work up the arrangements. And I do think that the sign of a good song is that you can strip everything away from it and just play it with one voice and one instrument. That's a strong sign to me if you can do that. And I also play solo shows pretty often, as I'm about to do in Mexico. And there are, so it's a nod to all of that. There are some people who say that they prefer when I play solo. I think that they're wrong, broadly speaking. But nevertheless, keep everyone happy. But it's just like, this is the rawest, this is the most naked version of these songs. And in most cases, not every case, but in most cases, it's like this is what they sounded like first before I put other instruments on them. Some songs do come together more in the room with the band, but most of the time they start like this.
Great. It's so good to know the origins of how you put a song at the beginning and then you create it on the final product we listen to.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
So people can, and this is the thing, like I'm not expecting every single person to listen to the acoustic version. It's for the people who are deeper. Do you know what I mean? The people who are more interested in what I do. But it's there if they want it.
Let me tell you, I believe Ceasefire is the one that I really, really love from that acoustic
Thank you.
album.
Thank you very much. That song's
Well,
very important to me, actually. So thank you.
cool. Well, Frank, now I want to talk about some of the previous things you have done. One is also very unexpected to me, but the first one that I want to know, you mentioned first that you met Gaston here in Mexico at Carpastros. I went to that show. I saw you and No Effects that day. And ever since then, I became a fan of yours. And one of the most interesting releases that I remember from you was this have No Effects covers and have your songs covered,
Yeah, yeah,
West
sure.
Coast versus Bessex. And I always thought you seem very close friends, Fat Mike and you. When did you met him? How's your relationship with him?
I would consider Mike a good friend. He's a lovely guy. I mean, he's fucking crazy, but like everybody knows, he's crazy. I met Mike in 2010, I think. We were both playing at a festival in the UK, and they were about to go on stage. And I think I'm right in saying that Matt Skiba was supposed to be playing guitar on the end of the decline, but he'd gone off into the night somewhere, and no one knew where he was. And I was on the side of the stage to watch one of my favorite bands, and Mike was like, "Does anyone know the guitar part at the end of the decline?" And I was like, I know the whole thing. And he was like, fuck, like, you don't need to know the whole thing. Shut the fuck up. But they gave me the guitar and I played the end of the decline with them. And Mike said afterwards that they've had lots of people play that guitar part, but I was the first one who did the backing vocals, apparently. So,
Okay.
so he was like, "Oh, who the fuck is this guy?" Like, so he came to a show that I did in LA a couple of months later and enjoyed the show, and we hung out afterwards, and we've been friends since. And yeah, he in summer 2019, he asked me if I wanted to do the split, and I pissed my pants. I mean, it was crazy. The last time NoFX did a split, it was with Rancid. You know what I mean? And like, they really are one of my all-time favorite bands. And I was very surprised in a good way. You know, I was like, Jesus Christ. I think when two musicians meet, they always go, I love your songs, because what else would you say? Right. But like when Mike asked me to do the split, I finally believed him when he said that. You know what I mean? And it's crazy to me hearing my songs played by NoFX. That's fucking wild. I can't really explain how that feels. And that record, I love that record. And that record is, if you know what I mean by this, it's my punk rock blue tick. Do you know what I mean? It's just kind of like the internet can come at me and tell me I'm not punk, and I'm like, fuck you, I did a split with NoFX.
Totally. Not because you play acoustic guitar, that doesn't mean you're not punk rock.
Right, totally. And well, actually, this is the other thing I really loved, and I'm going to try and say this in a way that isn't rude to anybody, and I'm probably going to fail. But
Don't
like,
worry.
I one of my very favorite things about it, obviously, when you're doing a cover split, you've got to do something different with the song, right? I mean, there's no point in just doing the same thing again because that's how it already is. What's the fucking point? And NoFX did that with my songs, and I'm very happy they did. But like, particularly like, there was a certain type of kind of YouTube comment, and this is the bit where I'm going to be reading quite often from like Brazil, let's say. Do you know what I mean? It's just people just being like, "What the fuck is this acoustic guitar bullshit?" You know, getting really angry that I'd done like a fingerpick version of "Falling in Love" or whatever, and that just made me really happy. It was like, "Fuck all of you." Do you know what I mean? Like, the whole point to me is that it's a beautiful, beautiful song. And Mike said that it was his favorite version of that song, so I win. But yeah, it was. I enjoyed pissing people off by doing different versions of songs, like the acoustic version of Bob, well, the kind of country version of Bob that we did, pissed off loads of people, and I love it.
It's awesome when you piss people off on the internet because they're angry all the time.
Right. I mean, that's why they're there ultimately, is to find something to be pissed off about.
Amazing. Frank, now I want to talk about, well, one of your most famous songs, which is Get Better. I want to tell you that, well, Get Better became this kind of generational anthem, and people listen to it to get relief, to get better, actually. They even get the title of the song tattooed and everything. Have you ever stopped to think how does it feel to create something with such an impact on people?
I mean, that's very kind of you to say. I mean, sometimes, sure, of course, you know, because I have seen a lot of tattoos and people talk to me about that song quite a lot and all the rest of it. I try not to think about it too much because I worry that if I spent too much time thinking about it, I would lose the ability to write any more songs like that. Do you know what I mean? It's like I
Mm.
wasn't thinking about that stuff when I wrote it. I was just trying to write a good song, and that came out. And I think that if I kind of walked around my house going, I write songs that are important or whatever, I'd just be an asshole. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
and I wouldn't be able to do it again. I mean, the thing is, I understand the impulse to tell a musician about that. You know, I have said similar things about other songs to other musicians that I've met. You know what I mean? Like there are musicians that I love, and I've said to them, "Dude, you don't understand how much that song changed my fucking life." So I do understand. I get it. I get the impulse, but it's just, I think it's important for me to not spend my days thinking about that shit. You know what I mean?
I totally agree because um, you can lose that sense of reality because at the end you're going to keep on revisiting those kind of themes and you got to
Right.
keep them fresh, right? Because
Right. Yeah.
that's one of the most important parts of music, to inspire and to reach people. Even some of them will get their life changes for a song.
Sure. Yeah. Which, but again, that's the thing that I need to not spend too much time thinking about. Like, I'm glad if it's a positive change, but I also don't want to kind of walk around flexing because that's, you know.
Love it. Well, Frank, as I mentioned too, um, this news was truly unexpected too for me because I bet nobody expected to have a Million Death reunion anywhere soon, and
Least
yet
of all me.
yet you're coming back. So I do want to know which are your plans and how did you decide, okay, it's the time to come back?
Well, this is a dumb story, but it's true. There is a I don't even know what any of the words I'm about to say mean. There is there is a like ebook spin-off series from Buffy the Vampire Slayer
Okay.
called Spike, and there is a scene in a Buffy in a Spike book where Spike, whoever the fuck Spike is, has to go somewhere quickly to get there to be in time for the Million Dead reunion show, right? And the guy who used to be our guitar tech for the band 20 years ago reads these books. And he read this and he took a photo of it and he sent it to all of us on an email and just said, lol kind of thing. And for the first time in 20 years, we were all on an email thread. And everybody was just like, how are you? What's new? Where do you live? What are you doing with your life? I mean, me and the drummer Ben have stayed friends over the years, but the other three actually people, I wasn't really up to speed on who they were and what they were doing. And we fell out pretty badly in 2005, but fuck, it was 20 years ago and we were
Yeah.
kids. And so we all started chatting on this thread and then I got pissed. And I think for a long time, the stumbling block to anything happening again was me because I was busy
Mhm.
with other music. I got kind of hammered at Christmas and called Ben and just said, should we do this, man? Should we fucking do this? And he was like, are you drunk? And I was like, yeah, but should we do this? Um, so then I went round to his house because his son is my godson.
Ah, cool.
So I went to visit because we've been friends since we were kids. And then we got drunk again and then ended up drunk calling the rest of the band and asking them if they wanted to do it. And everyone was like, maybe. And then we met up for a pint in a pub and it was okay. It was quite nice. And then we got into a practice room and we played a couple of songs and it not straight away, but after about an hour, suddenly it just kind of went and like clicked back into gear, and it was like, excuse me, it was like, oh, actually, there is power here, and I guess the calculation is that like, would we have fun? Yes. Would other people have fun? Yes. Then fucking why not? Do you know what I mean? Like, for a long time, I think I was quite sort of, I had like highbrow reasons for not doing it. And it's like, who gives a fuck, man? Like, just if you're going to have fun with it, just do it. I will say that we're not going to make any new records. We're not going to write any new songs. We're going to
Okay.
do like we've got a festival announced. We're going to do a couple of other shows and then we're going to do a tour and then that's it. Like, this isn't the beginning of the band. Like, there are bands that I love who've come back and I'm like, yay. And then they go, and here's our new album. And you're like, no, it's like, not that. Like, the whole reason to do it is nostalgia. People want to relive
Totally.
a time in their life. And I think that bands who reunite should be mindful of that. No one gives a fuck about us trying to pretend that we're 23, whatever the fuck, no one cares. They want to hear those songs again, played by us. So let's do that.
Which band reunion got you into that mood that, okay, you should
Oh,
have
you're
stayed
trying
in
to
the
fuck me up
past?
now. Um, I must admit, like, I saw Refused in '98, and I saw them when they first came back in 2014, whenever it was, and I thought it was amazing, and I thought they deserved it. They changed punk rock and they never got the credit, so good for them. And then they announced a new album, and it was just like, okay. And then I listened to it, and I didn't like it very much.
It happens. Well, Frank.